Villain Team Building Retreat. Chapter 1. The Invitation. In the heart of the dark metropolis of Shadowfall, where skyscrapers loomed like malevolent sentinels, a peculiar invitation was dispatched. It was not a summons to a clandestine meeting or a nefarious plot, but rather an invitation to a villain team-building retreat. The sender? None other than the enigmatic Dr. Malevolent, a mastermind known for his intricate schemes and penchant for the theatrical. The recipients of this invitation were a motley crew of villains, each with their own unique brand of malevolence. There was the cunning and elusive Shadowblade, the fiery and unpredictable Pyra, the tech-savvy and cold-hearted Cyberstrike, the hypnotic and manipulative Siren, and the brute force of Titanus. These villains had crossed paths many times, often as rivals, sometimes as reluctant allies, but never as a cohesive unit. The invitation promised a weekend of activities designed to strengthen their bonds, enhance their cooperative skills, and, most importantly, provide ample opportunities for mischief and mayhem. With curiosity piqued and rivalries simmering, the villains begrudgingly accepted the invitation, each with their own agenda in mind. Chapter 2. Arrival at the Retreat. The retreat was held at an isolated mansion on the outskirts of Shadowfall, a gothic structure that seemed to exude an aura of malevolence. The villains arrived one by one, each making a grand entrance befitting their larger-than-life personas. Shadowblade, clad in his signature black attire and mask, slipped in unnoticed, his presence only revealed by a flicker of movement in the shadows. Pyra arrived in a blaze of fire, her fiery hair and eyes glowing with an intensity that matched her volatile temperament. Cyberstrike's arrival was heralded by the hum of advanced technology, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the dim light. Siren's entrance was accompanied by a haunting melody that seemed to enchant the very air around her. Titanus, the last to arrive, made his presence known with a ground-shaking stomp, his massive frame towering over the others. Dr. Malevolent greeted them with a theatrical flourish, his dark cape billowing dramatically. "Welcome, my fellow purveyors of chaos," he intoned, his voice dripping with sinister charm. "This weekend, we shall embark on a journey of self-discovery, camaraderie, and, of course, a bit of villainous fun." Chapter 3. Icebreakers and Rivalries. The first activity was an icebreaker, a seemingly innocuous game designed to reveal hidden talents and foster a sense of unity. The villains were divided into pairs and tasked with completing a series of challenges, from solving complex puzzles to navigating obstacle courses. Shadowblade and Pyra were paired together, their contrasting personalities immediately clashing. "Try not to burn everything to the ground," Shadowblade muttered as Pyra's fiery temper flared. "Try not to disappear into the shadows like a coward," Pyra retorted, her eyes blazing. Cyberstrike and Siren found themselves in a battle of wits, each trying to outmaneuver the other. "Your mind games won't work on me," Cyberstrike said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We'll see about that," Siren replied with a sly smile, her voice laced with hypnotic undertones. Titanus, paired with Dr. Malevolent, struggled to keep his immense strength in check during the delicate tasks. "Just smash it," he grumbled, his patience wearing thin. "Patience, my friend," Dr. Malevolent said with a knowing smile. "All in good time." Chapter 4. Trust Exercises. The next activity was a series of trust exercises designed to build reliance and cooperation among the villains. The first exercise was a trust fall, with each villain taking turns to fall backward into the arms of their comrades. Shadowblade hesitated, his distrust of the others evident. "I don't need anyone to catch me," he said, his voice cold. "Suit yourself," Pyra replied, rolling her eyes. "But don't expect us to catch you when you fall." Cyberstrike and Siren's turn was equally tense, with Cyberstrike's logical mind struggling to trust Siren's manipulative nature. "If you drop me, I'll make sure you regret it," he warned. "Relax," Siren said with a smirk. "I won't let you fall, this time." Titanus, ever the brute, simply caught everyone with ease, his immense strength making the task effortless. "See? No problem," he said with a grin. Chapter 5. Team Challenges. As the retreat progressed, the villains were faced with more complex team challenges, each designed to test their ability to work together. One such challenge was a simulated heist, requiring them to infiltrate a heavily guarded vault and retrieve a valuable artifact. Shadowblade's stealth and agility were crucial in bypassing the security systems, while Pyra's fiery abilities provided a distraction. Cyberstrike hacked into the vault's advanced technology, while Siren used her hypnotic powers to manipulate the guards. Titanus, as always, provided the brute force necessary to break through any obstacles. Despite their differences, the villains found themselves working together with surprising efficiency. "Not bad," Shadowblade admitted grudgingly. "Don't get used to it," Pyra replied, her fiery temper still simmering. Chapter 6: Unlikely Friendships. As the weekend drew to a close, the villains found themselves forming unlikely friendships. Shadowblade and Pyra, despite their initial animosity, discovered a mutual respect for each other's abilities. Cyberstrike and Siren, though still wary of each other, found common ground in their shared love of manipulation and strategy. Titanus, ever the simple brute, found himself enjoying the camaraderie of his fellow villains. Dr. Malevolent watched with satisfaction, his plan to unite the villains proving more successful than he had anticipated. "Together, we are unstoppable," he declared, raising a glass in a toast. Chapter 7: The Final Challenge. The final challenge of the retreat was a grand battle royale, pitting the villains against each other in a test of strength, strategy, and cunning. The prize? The title of Ultimate Villain and a mysterious artifact said to grant immense power. The battle was fierce, with each villain using their unique abilities to gain the upper hand. Shadowblade's stealth and agility allowed him to strike from the shadows, while Pyra's fiery attacks scorched the battlefield. Cyberstrike's advanced technology provided him with an array of weapons and gadgets, while Siren's hypnotic power sowed chaos and confusion. Titanus, as always, relied on his brute strength to overpower his opponents. In the end, it was not strength or cunning that won the day, but rather cooperation. Realizing that they were stronger together, the villains formed an uneasy alliance, combining their abilities to overcome the final challenge. Chapter 8: A New Era. With the retreat over and the title of Ultimate Villain shared among them, the villains returned to Shadowfall with a newfound sense of unity. Though their rivalries and differences remained, they had learned the value of cooperation and teamwork. Dr. Malevolent's plan had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, and the villains, once divided, now stood united. A new era of villainy had begun, and Shadowfall would never be the same. Chapter 9: The Aftermath. As the sun rose over Shadowfall, casting long shadows across the city's twisted skyline, the villains returned to their respective lairs. The retreat had left them all with a strange mix of emotions, a newfound respect for each other's abilities, a lingering sense of camaraderie, and yet an undeniable urge to maintain their individual reputations as feared antagonists. Shadowblade slipped into his underground hideout, a labyrinth of dark corridors and hidden chambers. As he removed his mask, revealing a face scarred by years of battle, he couldn't help but replay the events of the retreat in his mind. The way Pyra's flames had danced in perfect harmony with his shadow techniques during their final challenge was impressive, to say the least. Speaking of Pyra, the fiery Villainous had retreated to her volcanic lair on the outskirts of the city. As she lounged on her obsidian throne, idly playing with flames between her fingers, she found herself grudgingly admitting that Shadowblade's stealth skills had been crucial to their success. "Maybe the shadow creep isn't completely useless after all," she muttered to herself, a small smirk playing on her lips. Cyberstrike, ever the pragmatist, immediately began analyzing the data from the retreat. His cybernetic eye whirred and clicked as he processed the information, looking for patterns and potential weaknesses in his fellow villains. Yet, even as he did so, a small part of his computerized brain noted the efficiency with which they had worked together. It was optimal. Siren, meanwhile, had returned to her underwater grotto, the haunting melodies of her voice echoing through the cavernous space. As she combed her long, iridescent hair, she hummed a tune that subtly incorporated elements of each villain's unique style. It was a song of unity, of potential, and perhaps of friendship. Titanus, the gentle giant, well, as gentle as a supervillain could be, lumbered back to his mountain stronghold. As he settled into his oversized chair, he grinned widely. Fun weekend, he rumbled to himself, his simple mind already looking forward to the next time he could play with his new friends. Dr. Malevolent, the mastermind behind it all, sat in his study, fingers steepled as he contemplated the success of his experiment. Phase 1 complete, he mused, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Now for Phase 2. As night fell over Shadowfall, an uneasy quiet settled over the city. The heroes, usually vigilant and patrolling, felt a chill run down their spines. Something had changed in the villainous underbelly of their city, but what? Little did they know, a new era of villainy was about to begin. Chapter 10. A New Threat. Weeks passed, and the villains fell back into their old routines, Shadowblade orchestrating silent heists, Pyra setting fire to rival territories, Cyberstrike hacking into secure networks, Siren manipulating the weak-minded, and Titanus, well, smashing things. Yet, each found themselves oddly dissatisfied with their solo endeavors. It was during one of Pyra's more spectacular arsons that the first whispers of a new presence in Shadowfall began to circulate. Witnesses spoke of a figure moving faster than the eye could follow, extinguishing Pyra's flames with unnatural speed and precision. Shadowblade encountered this mysterious entity next. During a meticulously planned infiltration of the Shadowfall National Bank, he found himself face to face with a masked figure clad in gleaming white and silver. The ensuing battle was brief but intense, ending with Shadowblade barely escaping, his pride wounded more than his body. Reports flooded in from across the city. Cyberstrike's most sophisticated virus was neutralized in seconds. Siren's hypnotic voice was countered by some sort of high-frequency interference. Even Titanus found his immense strength matched by this new player in town. The villains' phones buzzed simultaneously, a message from Dr. Malevolent lighting up their screens. Emergency meeting. My lair. Now. As they gathered in Dr. Malevolent's opulent study, the tension was palpable. Shadowblade leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed, while Pyra paced restlessly, leaving scorch marks on the expensive carpet. Cyberstrike interfaced with Dr. Malevolent's computer system, pulling up all available data on the new threat. Siren perched gracefully on the edge of a leather armchair, while Titanus struggled to fit his bulk through the doorway. I assume you've all had the pleasure of meeting our city's newest hero, Dr. Malevolent began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. They call themselves the Vigilant. More like the pain in the ass, Pyra grumbled, flames flickering in her hair. Indeed, Dr. Malevolent continued. This Vigilant poses a significant threat to our operations. Their abilities seem to be specifically tailored to counter each of ours. It's as if they studied us, Shadowblade mused, his eyes narrowing behind his mask. Precisely, Cyberstrike interjected, his robotic voice emotionless. My analysis suggests a 98.7% probability that the Vigilant has been observing us for months, possibly years. Siren's melodic voice cut through the tension. So, what do we do about it? I don't know about you all, but I'm not about to let some goody two-shoes in a shiny costume ruin my fun. Titanus cracked his knuckles, the sound like boulders colliding. We smash. Dr. Malevolent's lips curled into a sinister smile. No, my dear Titanus. We don't just smash. We plan. We strategize. And then, we annihilate. The villains exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension in their eyes. They had come together once before, during the retreat. But this was real. This was war. Well then, Shadowblade said, pushing off from the bookshelf. Let's get to work. Chapter 11. The Plan. The next few days saw Dr. Malevolent's lair transformed into a hub of villainous activity. Maps of Shadowfall covered the walls, marked with potential Vigilant sightings and patrol routes. Cyberstrike's holographic displays flickered with data streams and predictive models. The air crackled with energy, both from Pyra's barely contained excitement and the sheer concentration of evil genius in one place. "All right, let's review the plan one more time," Dr. Malevolent announced, standing at the head of a long, obsidian table. The other villains gathered around, an unlikely war council if ever there was one. Phase 1, Distraction, he began, nodding to Pyra and Titanus. "You two will create chaos in the financial district. Pyra, I want flames visible from space. Titanus, make the earth shake. Give the Vigilant something they can't ignore." Pyra's eyes gleamed with fiery anticipation, while Titanus grinned and pounded his fists together. Phase 2, Isolation, Dr. Malevolent continued, turning to Cyberstrike and Siren. Once the Vigilant engages Pyra and Titanus, Cyberstrike will activate the EMP device, cutting off all communication in and out of the area. Siren, your job is to use your powers to create mass confusion among the civilians. We want the Vigilant alone and cut off from any potential help. Cyberstrike nodded curtly, while Siren hummed a haunting tune of agreement. Phase 3, Capture, Dr. Malevolent said, his gaze landing on Shadowblade. While the Vigilant is distracted and isolated, Shadowblade will move in with the containment device. One touch and our troublesome hero will be trapped in a pocket dimension. Shadowblade fingered the small, cube-like device on his belt, his expression unreadable behind his mask. And finally, Phase 4, Interrogation, Dr. Malevolent concluded, a wicked gleam in his eye. Once captured, we'll bring the Vigilant back here. Together, we'll unmask this meddlesome hero and convince them to stay out of our affairs permanently. The villains exchanged dark looks, each imagining their own version of convincing. "Any questions?" Dr. Malevolent asked, surveying the group. Titanus raised a massive hand. "What if plans go wrong?" A moment of silence fell over the room. It was Shadowblade who broke it. "Then we improvise. We adapt. We've all faced setbacks before. But this time, we face them together." The other villains nodded in agreement, a newfound sense of unity settling over them. "Well said, Shadowblade," Dr. Malevolent smiled. "Now, let's go remind Shadowfall why they fear the dark." As the villains dispersed to prepare for their roles, an undercurrent of excitement ran through the group. This wasn't just another heist or act of destruction. This was their moment to prove that united, they were a force to be reckoned with. Little did they know, the Vigilant was preparing for them too, and the coming battle would test their newfound alliance in ways they couldn't imagine. Chapter 12, The Execution. The next evening, Shadowfall's financial district erupted into chaos. Pyra's flames danced between skyscrapers, painting the night sky in shades of orange and red. The ground trembled beneath Titanus's feet as he tore through the streets, cars and debris flying in his wake. Come out, wherever you are," Pyra sang, her voice carrying over the roar of the flames. "We've got a score to settle, Vigilant." As if on cue, a streak of white and silver flashed through the inferno. The Vigilant had arrived. "Now!" Dr. Malevolent's voice crackled through their earpieces. Cyberstrike, perched atop a nearby building, activated the EMP device. A wave of energy pulsed through the area, plunging the district into darkness. Phones went dead, cars stalled, and the ever-present hum of electricity fell silent. In the sudden quiet, Siren's voice rose, a haunting melody that sent civilians into a panic. The streets filled with confused and frightened people, creating a chaotic backdrop for the unfolding battle. The Vigilant, momentarily disoriented by the EMP and the sudden influx of panicked civilians, hesitated. It was all the opening Pyra and Titanus needed. "Flame on, big guy," Pyra shouted, sending a torrent of fire towards the Vigilant. Titanus followed up with a massive chunk of concrete, hurled with terrifying accuracy. The Vigilant dodged the flames with inhuman speed, but was caught off guard by the debris. The impact sent them crashing through the window of a nearby building. Shadowblade, you're up. Dr. Malevolent's voice came through the comm. Like a wraith, Shadowblade materialized from the shadows inside the building. The Vigilant, rising from the shattered glass, barely had time to register the new threat before Shadowblade was upon them. The two engaged in a deadly dance, Shadowblade's fluid movements matching the Vigilant's speed blow for blow. But Shadowblade wasn't trying to win, he was buying time, maneuvering the Vigilant into position. "Now, Siren," he called out. Siren's voice changed, focusing into a concentrated beam of sonic energy. The Vigilant, caught off guard by this sudden assault on their senses, stumbled. It was the opening Shadowblade needed. He lunged forward, the containment device in his hand. But at the last moment, the Vigilant twisted, narrowly avoiding the trap. In the process, their mask was torn away, revealing. "Impossible," Shadowblade breathed. The face beneath the mask was familiar. It was the mayor's daughter, a young woman named Arya who was known for her philanthropic work in Shadowfall. The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the villains. Pyra's flames faltered, Titanus lowered the car he was about to throw, and even Cyberstrike's digital readouts seemed to stutter. Arya, her identity revealed, didn't hesitate. She used the moment of surprise to her advantage, unleashing a flurry of attacks that sent the villains reeling. "Fall back." Dr. Malevolent's voice crackled through the comms, a note of panic in his usually composed tone. "Regroup at the lair." As the villains beat a hasty retreat, Arya stood amidst the destruction, her determined gaze following their escape. This battle was over, but the war had just begun. Back at Dr. Malevolent's lair, the atmosphere was tense. Their carefully laid plan had unraveled in seconds, all because of an unexpected face behind the mask. "Well," Pyra said, breaking the silence. "That could have gone better." Chapter 13. Betrayal. In the days following their failed attempt to capture the Vigilant, an uneasy tension settled over the villains. They had retreated to Dr. Malevolent's lair to regroup and strategize, but the revelation of the Vigilant's true identity had thrown them all off balance. Shadowblade paced restlessly, his usual calm demeanor shaken. "The mayor's daughter," he muttered. All this time, it was her. Pyra, sprawled dramatically across a chaise lounge, rolled her eyes. "So what? She's still our enemy. Who cares who's under the mask?" "It matters," Cyberstrike interjected, his robotic voice unusually subdued. "This changes the variables. The mayor's resources, the public sympathy, these are factors we didn't account for." Siren, perched on a windowsill, hummed thoughtfully. "Perhaps we could use this to our advantage." "Blackmail, maybe?" "No," Dr. Malevolent said firmly, entering the room. "We stick to the plan. Capture, interrogate, eliminate the threat. The identity of the Vigilant changes nothing." As the villains argued over their next move, none of them noticed Titanus slip quietly from the room, an impressive feat for someone of his size. Hours passed, and the debate raged on. It was Pyra who finally noticed the giant's absence. "Hey, where's the big lug?" A moment of confused silence fell over the group, broken by the sudden blaring of alarms. Cyberstrike rushed to the security monitors, his cybernetic eye whirring as he processed the information. "We've been compromised," he announced, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Titanus, he's let the Vigilant into the lair." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Shadowblade was the first to recover, his voice cold with fury. "He betrayed us." Before anyone could respond, the doors to the room burst open. There stood Arya, still in her Vigilant costume minus the mask, with Titanus looming behind her. "It's over," Arya declared, her voice firm. "Surrender now, and I'll ensure you're treated fairly in court." Dr. Malevolent laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "My dear, you seem to have forgotten who you're dealing with. We don't surrender." What followed was chaos. Pyra unleashed Inferno, while Shadowblade disappeared into the shadows. Cyberstrike's arm transformed into a plasma cannon, and Siren's voice rose in a deadly crescendo. But Arya was ready. With Titanus at her side, she met their assault head-on. The lair became a battlefield with energy blasts, flames, and sonic waves crisscrossing the air. As the battle raged, Shadowblade found himself face-to-face with Titanus. "Why?" he hissed, dodging a massive fist. "Why betray us?" Titanus's usually simple face was creased with what looked like regret. "Titanus tired of being bad," he rumbled. "Want to be hero. Want to help people." The fight continued, but the villains were off balance, their teamwork shattered by the betrayal. One by one, they fell back, cornered by Arya and Titanus. As Arya approached Dr. Malevolent, a pair of high-tech handcuffs at the ready, the mastermind of the villainous group stood his ground, a defiant gleam in his eyes. "You think this is over?" Dr. Malevolent sneered. "You may have won this battle, Vigilant, but the war is far from over." Arya tightened her grip on the handcuffs, her expression resolute. "It's over, Malevolent. Surrender now, and no one else has to get hurt." But Dr. Malevolent had one last trick up his sleeve. With a flick of his wrist, he activated a hidden mechanism in his lair. The floor beneath Arya and Titanus opened up, sending them plummeting into a hidden chamber below. "Now!" Dr. Malevolent shouted to his remaining allies. "Regroup and counterattack." Shadowblade, Pyra, Cyberstrike, and Siren quickly recovered from their initial shock. Shadowblade melted into the shadows, reappearing behind Arya with a blade poised to strike. Pyra's flames roared back to life, creating a wall of fire between them and their enemies. Cyberstrike's plasma cannon hummed with renewed energy, and Siren's voice rose in a hypnotic melody. Arya and Titanus found themselves surrounded, but they didn't back down. With a determined look, Arya activated her suit's energy shield, deflecting Shadowblade's attack. Titanus roared and charged at Pyra, his massive fists swinging with devastating force. The battle in the hidden chamber was fierce, with both sides giving it their all. But despite their best efforts, Arya and Titanus were outnumbered and outmatched. Dr. Malevolent's cunning and the villains' combined powers began to take their toll. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a sudden explosion rocked the lair. The ceiling above them crumbled, and a group of heroes burst through the debris. Leading them was none other than the city's greatest hero, Captain Valor. "Need a hand, Vigilant?" Captain Valor called out, his voice booming with authority. Arya's eyes widened in surprise and relief. "Captain Valor, you're just in time." With the arrival of the heroes, the tide of the battle quickly turned. Captain Valor's super strength and invulnerability made him a formidable opponent, while his team of heroes, each with their own unique abilities, provided the support Arya and Titanus needed. Dr. Malevolent's expression twisted in rage as he realized his carefully laid plans were unraveling. "Retreat!" he shouted to his allies. "Fall back and regroup." But it was too late. The heroes pressed their advantage, and one by one, the villains were subdued. Shadowblade was disarmed and captured by Captain Valor. Pyra's flames were extinguished by a hero with water manipulation powers. Cyberstrike's systems were hacked and disabled, and Siren was silenced by a hero with sound-canceling abilities. Dr. Malevolent, seeing no way out, reluctantly raised his hands in surrender. "This isn't over," he growled. "You may have won today, but I'll be back." Arya stepped forward, her expression determined. "Not if we have anything to say about it, Malevolent. Shadowfall will be safe from your schemes." Chapter 14. The Final Showdown. With the villains captured, the heroes secured Dr. Malevolent's lair and transported the defeated villains to a high-security prison designed to contain super-powered individuals. The city of Shadowfall breathed a collective sigh of relief as news of the villains' defeat spread. Arya, now fully revealed as the Vigilant, stood alongside Captain Valor and the other heroes as they addressed the media. The city's residents cheered and celebrated their newfound protectors, grateful for the heroes' bravery and determination. But even as the city celebrated, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. She knew that Dr. Malevolent and his allies would be back, and that Shadowfall would need to remain vigilant. Chapter 15: Reflection and Growth. In the days that followed, the captured villains were interrogated and their lairs dismantled. Shadowfall's heroes worked tirelessly to ensure that the city remained safe and secure. Arya found herself reflecting on the events that had transpired. She had always known that being a hero would be challenging, but the experience had taught her valuable lessons about teamwork, trust, and the importance of standing up for what was right. She also found herself thinking about Titanus, the villain who had chosen to betray his allies and fight for a better future. Despite his past, he had shown that even the most unlikely individuals could change and make a difference. Chapter 16: A New Beginning. As the city of Shadowfall began to rebuild and recover, Arya and the other heroes continued their work, patrolling the streets and protecting the innocent. The villains' defeat had brought a sense of hope and optimism to the city, but Arya knew that their work was far from over. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Arya stood on the rooftop of a tall building, looking out over the skyline. Captain Valor approached her, his expression thoughtful. "You did good, Arya," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Shadowfall is lucky to have you." Arya smiled, her resolve stronger than ever. "Thank you, Captain. But I couldn't have done it without all of you. We're a team, and together, we can face whatever challenges come our way." Captain Valor nodded in agreement. "Indeed. And with you leading the charge, I have no doubt that we'll be ready for anything." As the two heroes stood together, watching the city below, they knew that a new era had begun. The villains' defeat had marked the beginning of a brighter future for Shadowfall, one where heroes and citizens alike could work together to build a safer, stronger community. And so, with renewed determination and a sense of unity, Arya and her fellow heroes prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in the heart of Shadowfall, the spirit of heroism burned brighter than ever, ready to protect the city from any threat that dared to rise. And thus concludes the story of the villain team-building retreat. The villains' attempt to unite and conquer was thwarted by the bravery and determination of the heroes, leading to a new era of hope and unity in Shadowfall.
Subscribe for more.